Okay. Right, back to what? Joe, could you just go and grab a stand from someone? Yes. Okay. You don't want the writing chairs?
Yes. Yeah.
Right.
Right.
You don't want the writing chairs?
No.
I don't need to write, so I don't want one.
No, it's fine.
No, okay.
Platform get in and out of it, isn't it?
Fine, I just don't mind. There's probably just one up in a teaching room, Joe. Yeah. Thanks.
Was that watched pot syndrome, right?
Yes.
Oh, bless.
Thank you, love. Right, next tune. Do we have it ready? It's alright, you okay? Yeah. Mum okay? Okay, everyone tuned?
Yeah.
Yeah, great. Let's start and then you lot can play tonalisation while I say tonalisation. Thank you very much. Lovely to see you. Right, Joe, would you lead tonalisation, please?
Okay.
Think about how you're going to establish a pulse before you start.
Okay. So, everyone, let's make sure we get ourselves really nice and grounded, because even though we're doing tonalisation, you've done it loads of times before, actually connect with your body and connect with the ground, alright? So let's get ready. So I'd like 5 counts for each note, and you'll see my counting. Ready?
You are doing 6 now. Yeah, I had said whether we counted 5, but I actually meant 6.
Okay.
I think
Perhaps not the most user-friendly
three
word
fives.
in the world.
Yes.
3 5s, 2 6s. 4
And
5s.
yeah.
Right, let's play Becker Gavotte. Lovely people.
I'm going to stand over here because I'm running the sun there and I'm getting hot
Already, yeah, I'm not surprised. Isn't it delightful? It's very freezing cold.
Yeah, it is.
you've played, in fact, let's just go from there, the last time. Sorry, that was my fault. So, ending 3 coming up. Ending 4 coming up. Well, that was a lovely ending 4. Good. Okay, well done, everybody. So, as we were playing, I was thinking, why don't I do all these shifts that I can see various different versions of, which is really great. And I think, partly I don't because I go on automatic pilot and I just do what I usually do, but I think thinking about it, this piece is so huge. And my students become very good shifters from all of the games and exercises and stuff that we do. Mostly at this stage, around stuff that we were talking about last week. Old pieces in new positions, tonalisation in different positions. I've never had a problem with them sort of hitting that book 4 brick wall of not being able to shift well enough to play Vivaldi. I mean, there's all sorts of other brick walls they might hit with Vivaldi, but shifting is not one of them. And so I kind of think if you add in all of that extra shifting difficulty into Becker, it's going to become even more of a huge mountain piece than it need be. So it's up to you, but kind of be aware, I guess, that, and you know, this one, that's quite hard to make sound nice. You get a lot of, or like, it's quite fast, you don't want to slow it down, you know, so just kind of be aware that that might be a place where you don't want to just automatically put in all the shifting that's possible, like we have talked about doing in the other pieces.
Before.
Yes.
That's a nice one to do.
It is really nice. I think maybe it's better in review than in the first time through because, again, it's hard. It's a either a portamento or in a slur with a guide note.
Yeah.
I don't think you do portamento on a 4. Although probably we all did because that's what the sound you want, but in terms of teaching it, it's too soon.
It's, if you do get up there, it's quite. I can't think of another time where you're shifting down from a 2 to say no to a 4, which is would be a U. And
which bit are you thinking of?
bar at 40, 39 and 40.
Oh, that one. Yeah.
It's quite nice to be able to do that on the ringing note. On the E,
yeah.
And you've got it there, it's ring, and you've got the space to get down to the 4.
I guess the thing is, if you've done lots of those games we were talking about last week, they will have done that a lot. So when you watch the shifting video that's now on the CPD playlist, everything's always on there as soon as we've done it, because otherwise I can't keep track of what I've uploaded and what I haven't. So if you're ever waiting for something and it hasn't come by the next day, do text me and say, have you put it up? Because I tend to think I've done it all on the day. Like Kit texted me about, there was 30 seconds of Noel's lesson uploaded, which is really weird and annoying because then I've already deleted it, so we just don't have that lesson. So, like thinking about this piece and what the tick boxes are, i.e. the teaching points, we've got intonation, tone, memory. The memory is not a small job, as demonstrated by the fact that all of us professionals were not quite perfectly together. Boxes, accidentals, sorry I'm probably going too fast. I haven't even had any coffee yet.
Well done.
So intonation, tone, memory, those are the kind of, your standards, aren't they? Boxes, accidentals, up-bow staccato. It's a huge sort of part of the map towards up-bow spiccato, this piece. DR release. Which you can also call more or less, but it's just a bit, I think DR.
How do you spell DR?
I spell it like Ed Kreitman does, which is D-E-E-Y-A.
D-E-E-Y-A. Oh, Y. Oh, D. Oh, yes. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that works. Yeah.
I mean, I don't know why it needs the dash. Because you wouldn't say anything else without the dash. would you?
Maybe it just allows you to give a bit more emphasis.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That might make it a bit more
I mean,
accurate.
if it's two different notes, that's how you write for a chord thing, one word.
What?
If it was two different notes under a line.
Oh yeah, might be that.
You would
Yeah.
dash.
Yeah.
In the one word.
Anyway, dynamics, boxes, and characters.
Characters. Is dynamics and characters in the same box?
No.
Characters.
So what do you think I mean by the characters?
Different sections having a different approach.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Different, literally sort of imagining, and you know, with my students we'll talk about, right, who do you think this is? Like Gavotte is the perfect book 2 version of that. Who is this character? And you know, you can talk about words like cheeky. They will often say a child. You know, is it a child or an adult? You can give them all sorts of questions. You know, what do they look like? What, you know, is it someone that you know? Like they sometimes will want to like, oh, it's like my friend Mandy, or they'll be like, you know, I don't know, it's a 3-year-old boy with brown hair and whatever, like. And talking about the question and answers, that this is sort of like a conversation, isn't it? And then, you know, here comes someone else who's like very forceful character. I do try and encourage my students not to say, this is a little girl talking to her mum, and then her dad comes and shouts, and all the rubbish gender stuff that can come in that. But, you know, whether you want to take that on is up to you. It was really interesting. The other day I was doing the parent education course, as I do about once a month, and we were talking about the social justice aspect of Suzuki and what that looks like at Suzuki Hub, and or you know what the ethos of Suzuki Hub is. And this dad said, so I've had all this great stuff about the social justice and the like philosophy behind Suzuki, but what does that actually look like in terms of like how do you do that while you're teaching music? And it's just been such an interesting week since then, because I've been thinking about it really often, because like every time I make a little comment like that, I'm like, yeah, that's one of the ways that we do it. And, you know, talking about like the showing the videos in group class that are like the diversity playlist that I put together, and, you know, talking about diversity and talking about the kind of philosophy of what Suzuki Hub stands for at all the concerts. And I feel like I talk about it until I'm blue in the face, but hopefully other people don't. But, you know, it was just really interesting, like, yeah, what does that actually look like? Like, I think for a lot of teachers, if you're going to teach music, you just think, well, how can you just drop in something about diversity or equality or whatever? And there's, like, lots of opportunities, actually.
It's just like I mean, I think of it as a teacher. I mean, if you've got to be a role model, and it's got to be about doing, showing, and so you've got to.
But also telling, because your life they don't see; they just see you in that room for 30 minutes a week.
Yeah.
And you know, like I think I felt for a long time when the hub started, I felt like, well, I can't really talk about, particularly the inclusion side of things. I can't really talk about it, but people will just see it when they come. And then I had various conversations with people, and they were like, "Oh yeah, well of course it's diverse, it's in Hackney." And I was like, "Okay, right. So this is not the same." You know, just showing that we represent our local community is very different from telling people that the reason we represent our local community is because we put a whole lot of work into that. And I could have easily set up a Suzuki programme that looks like all of the ones in West London. Not anyone else. DSG is another good. But yeah, it was interesting. Anyway, back to teaching points, because we are on the clock. Right, so yeah, and then you have obviously the B section, change of key, change of character again. So this character thing, I think, is normally done in review rather than the first time through. I do dynamics in review. And you know, in terms of like what kind of level you expect for your students to get a credit, that is up to you, and obviously I hope that you will experiment and try different things for your whole career, as Dr. Suzuki was very fond of doing. But also, I think it is really difficult to memorise this, and so I've quite often given credits, even if there's a little bit of confusion and they need a bit of help. But some useful ways to talk about the memory. So, does not go on the E string. So this is like obviously the most simple version, the first ending. No sliding, no finger pattern changes within like, you know, one string. Very sort of straightforward. And then you can think, okay, well, you know, we talk with our students about decorating something that gets repeated a lot of times. But you're never going to just play the same thing over and over again because it gets very boring. So here you have the same question. Sorry. And answer one is very plain and simple. And then if they're going to ask the question again, we're going to give a different answer. And so for me, I talk about the fact that the sliding one, that then needs to be released for the B flat. So make sure that your students are not keeping this one on, because you'll get that. So they need to release that B natural before, you know, as soon as they played it, basically, as soon as the 2 goes on. And then we have the middle section. Have you got your book, Joe?
Yeah.
I think things like releasing the one is much more useful to put directly in the music than it is to write down and then write it back. I don't need it, I'm just suggesting that you write straight into it rather than write everything on a piece of paper and then transfer it all over it. You may already have it, but you might not. Okay, and then the question for the third time, obviously the same. Right, this is getting a bit heated, isn't it? Like a bit cross. So that's the first time we have semiquavers, but it's still not going on the E string, which is a useful way to remember answer 4. It's like the culmination of all of those different options. It's got the sliding one, it's got the E string, it's got the semiquavers, and it's sort of the most, you know, emphatic of the 4, isn't it? So you can do games like having each ending on a piece of paper and get them to put them in the right order. You know, just photocopy it and chop them up. You can roll a die and ask them to roll again if they get 5 or 6, but play whichever one they get if they get 1 to 4.
That's the only way I could memorise them, is isolate the endings.
Yeah.
And just go through them, you know.
Yeah.
Like exactly as you're saying.
Yeah, exactly.
Same with Martini Gavotte.
Oh God, Martini, I still get, I mean, I've been teaching Martini for 20 years and playing it for even longer, and I'm still, if someone says to me in a play together, would you lead Martini Gavotte? I'm like, yes, of course. I still, oh God. I mean, I know it, but I still worry that I'm going to mess it up.
Yeah. It is.
That goes the big and helps.
When you think about all the details as well, the different, just the slight variations in the bowings and the dynamics, which is what makes it interesting.
Yeah.
And it's quite a task.
It is. I mean, I have to say, sometimes I think it would be really interesting to do like a Suzuki sort of quiz and see if you got the blank music, how much of the detail you could fill in. I'm pretty confident on lots of them, but Martini, I know that I couldn't put in the correct dynamics.
I did actually do that for myself. Actually, I'll send it to you.
Oh, wow.
I wrote it out, but I never did it.
Lovely.
I wrote it. Not
Writing it out though is probably work.
The just the verses. Just the verses, and you know, as a little test of myself, which I never did. But it's very nicely done. I'll send it to you.
I think the physical act of writing that out has probably done the job.
But well, no, it didn't. But it did temporarily.
Right. So my repetition boxes are 8 halfway through to halfway through 10. Mostly for the sliding one and then the release, so you get that B flat in tune. So 8 to 10 halfway through each. So who can tell me how we are identifying how many repetitions to set a child by this sort of stage?
Use the age, or just once you've got it, once they can accurately do it and you know they've got it, maybe even ask them, because by this point they're slightly older, you could even ask them, what do you think?
Good. And Ed, what do you think their answer should be based on?
Their answer should be based on accuracy of how many times they accurately do it, rather than repetition. So
that's the outcome of them doing it, which is also very important. But if you're, so let's role play, Joe. I'm the teacher, you're the student. Okay, so we've just done all of this working out how to play it, and I say to you, okay, so now that you can play it, and we practice once we've got it right, not until we get it right, yeah? So now's the time we're going to start the practice. How many times do you think that we should do this at home?
4.
Okay, why do you think 4?
So I can play it.
Maybe I think 8. What do you think? How would you try and persuade me that 4 is appropriate?
Good point.
I'm asking you.
As a child, I'd be like, well, I can play it, and I think I know it, so
Yeah, and
I
it's...
need to do it as much as that.
No, you're justifying why 4 would be better than 8. Obviously 8 is always better, right? I mean, like, ideally, we should be doing 25, 50, 100. Like,
eight
but,
good ones, yeah.
But why is 4 okay? How could you persuade me? You can persuade me that 4 would be fine. What is your argument for that? Anyone in the room now, stop picking on Joe.
So if it was a child trying to persuade you that 4
You
is
don't
okay.
need to do it 8 times.
I would say something like, if you're only going to do 4, because I'd say 4, that doesn't feel like very much to me. If you're going to do 4, they've got to be 4 really, really good ones.
Excellent.
I want you to think about everything that we've talked about. If we're only going to do 4, they've got to be perfect.
Okay, that's very good. But what I'm trying to drill down into is why this box might be okay for only 4, whereas the box at bar 24 is definitely going to be nearer to 10.
I don't know anything new, really.
Yeah, it's just not very hard.
Yeah.
It's not very hard.
Yeah.
I can do it 4 times because it's just not that hard.
Yeah.
So it doesn't need drilling like something that's got a shift and a slide and a harmonic and a, you know.
if you are is there a real quota to say I have got this? So if you can do things, whether it's hard or easy, 4 times in a row with absolute accuracy, the road to get there is lots of repetitions. So just doing 8 because you can do 8 is just doing 8 because you can do 8. But if you can do 4, whether it's easier, the road to get there will be quicker. So it's harder.
This is my point. The road to get there is determined by how many good repetitions you do. Absolutely, I agree with you. But also how many challenges there are in that box. Otherwise, you're saying, well, why aren't you doing this 10 times every day?
Well, that was what I think.
Like what?
That would you have to make it very clear about why you're doing it.
Exactly.
So because as you say, you could do the same bar for lots of different reasons.
Exactly. So my point is, when you've got a child in the middle of book 3, probably around between 8 and 12, maybe, their practice time is hopefully being used quite efficiently, and you are setting them a lot to do in their practice. They might be doing 5 review pieces, some scales, some sight reading, something for orchestra, maybe something for school orchestra, and also their working piece in the boxes. So if you just automatically go, right, here are all your boxes, they're 10 boxes, you're going to be overloading that child and other things are going to fall off.
Yeah.
Whereas if you say to them, this is a 5 box, I don't tend to set less than 5, I have to say. I do tend to set 5 as a minimum. But this is a 5 box because it's quite easy. So A, it's quite easy, it won't take you a lot of brain power to bang it out 5 times correctly. And B, if you do it 5 times for a week when you can play it, then probably next week we can just rub that box out. Like that's what happens with my kids, is they do a box until they can reliably do it, you know, the 3 C's, they're on number 3, and then we take it out. That doesn't necessarily mean they've got the credit, that just means that bit is now fine and reliable as long as they're focusing. And then you can say, okay, well, so you've been doing this bit really nicely, but we're getting this. So let's take that box out and put that in a box. Yeah?
Okay. Yeah.
So you want to look at, and your students will really appreciate you training them in the very long term to identify how difficult something is and therefore how much practice it needs. And in the short term, they will really appreciate the fact that it's not just like, there's a box, do it 10 times. It will be like, they know that it's flexible, and they know that if they work hard, more things will be easier for them, and therefore they will have to do fewer boxes, fewer times.
Yeah, it's reminds me of something I read ages ago. I was reading a book about Dorothy DeLane. She used to say when somebody said it's really hard, she said, no, honey, it's not hard. It's just time consuming.
Well, I like that one.
And I think that's quite helpful.
Yeah.
This was just what you're saying. Basically.
It's really
it just
good.
takes more time. No, it's not difficult. It's not difficult. It's just time consuming.
Yeah.
Meaning
That is very good.
You can do anything.
Yeah.
It just takes a little bit
Yeah.
more time.
I struggle with the idea that we should never tell the kids that what they're doing is difficult. I know there are lots of Suzuki teachers who will never say difficult, they say tricky instead. And I think A, my students are clever enough to work out that when you say tricky, you mean difficult. And B, this is really hard. Like playing the violin is a really hard thing to do. Why shouldn't we level with the kids and be like, it's really hard, you're going to have to work hard to do it.
Yeah, that's right.
But that doesn't mean you can't. Like, you know, there's a big sort of thing with kids at the moment, like, you can do hard things.
Yeah,
like, this is a real lesson.
Yeah.
We're not trying to educate the students to make things easier because we don't want them to do hard things. We're trying to teach them that when you do hard things, they become easier.
Yeah.
So you can do hard things and they're not going to be hard for you in however long.
Yeah,
And that hard is
exactly.
relative.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and it doesn't
It's
kill
not-
you. It doesn't kill you to do hard things.
Yeah.
It doesn't hurt you.
No, exactly.
It doesn't say hard.
I would say to them, look,
Exactly.
people don't think you're good, clever for play. People, if you can play the violin, people think you're clever. They don't think you're clever because it's easy.
Yeah,
They find it. They think you're clever because it's difficult.
yeah, exactly.
I've never met somebody who gives up the violin because they find it too easy.
That's a brilliant idea. No, I've got to find a harder instrument actually because this is just too simple for
I've
me.
just mastered it. There's nothing more I can learn.
I've heard that. Your child who has
Well,
done
yeah,
that.
from a child.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Oh, honey, no.
Yeah, good. So I think my 10 boxes are, and I do 14 halfway through until halfway through 18 because it's got the shift in it and it also has the utmost staccato at this stage. So. And I do think it's useful to do that shift, particularly because it goes back to a B flat, and they haven't done a lot of shifting up and down from like a major third one and a minor third.
Which is like where's one?
The one at the
At the
end
bar
of
17.
17.
Oh.
That one.
So you go up on the on
Open
the 2.
string.
You do an open string, then 1 and then 2.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So shift. Yeah, I mean I would never, I don't think even for myself. It's so gross.
Yeah, no, it's
And an open A is fine in this piece.
Mm.
So I do change the fingering, but I do a shift.
Okay, and you would teach that shift the first time round?
Yeah.
Interesting.
That's the only shift I always teach in this piece.
That's what threw me when I was watching you lead when we played it. I was like, oh yeah, there's a shift there and our brain just went blank.
Yeah.
Okay.
I do think this is nice. But we've talked about why I wouldn't do it the first time through anyway. Okay, so I put all of the answers in boxes apart from answer 1, and if you're going to do that shift, then do put that in a box as well. The only box that is more than 5 for me is the last one. If you've got a student who needs you to teach most of book 3 in 2 sections that they get credits for and then put together, which is a lot of students, I would recommend that you teach the major part first while you preview some of the stuff in the minor, because there's so much stuff in the minor that if you start with the minor, you know, it just doesn't really speed anything up. It's the same as doing it just in one go, but it means that they just take longer on it. Whereas if you teach them the major, which has really only got 2 challenges in it, which we'll talk about now, then they can get going on the boxes of the first part, but without worrying about all of the notes.
So learn the major section and the boxes from the first part, not put it all together until they've got all that under their
Yeah, and they get a credit for the major section. And then that means when you say, right, now you can start the minor section, oh my goodness, you can already play all the hard bits. Great, just fill in the gaps. So the 2 boxes in the major section are 32 halfway through. Again, you've got to release the 3 after the G sharp. Otherwise you get... Well, you can't even keep it on, but anyway, they've got to make sure they know they're coming down. There.
Are you doing the position change now?
No, I'm not
No.
doing that in first position.
Right.
Getting the clarity on the last beat of that bar requires you to use the arm for this part and then the hand with a little extra grip on the string for the semiquaver. Otherwise you just get no clarity on the semiquaver. That kind of sound. So arm, hand. Let's just play that box. What?
My handwriting is important.
I'm not worried in any way about your handwriting. So let's do from halfway through 30, which is the second.
Times, but
good.
Articulation.
Yeah.
You're doing it all on the string.
I am not squeezing into the string, but I don't think they're ready to lift at this stage. Yeah, so it's pretty much like a sort of gentle perpetual motion with a rest in between. Like if you think about that. Sorry. And actually, wouldn't it be nice if perpetual motion did actually have a rest in between each note, because then the staccato would be so obvious.
Yeah.
So this is sort of like, you know, but you know, it's not like sticking into the string, but we don't want that. Later on, when you're doing book 4 version of this, then, you know, they've learned staccato.
Yeah.
But not at the moment. That's just.
And how much length would you say to do for that?
About 3 centimetres on each bow. So the first 2, because you finished at the tip. Okay, not 3 centimetres, 7 centimetres. So way smaller, maybe. Sorry, way smaller. After your first 2.
Oh.
Just copy my bowing.
Okay.
Yeah, you'll find it much easier to control, and therefore your students. Everybody? must tell your students this is the piano solo. You may have noticed I don't say, I'll play the piano. And
That is
yeah,
a
they need to
mad
get X. Oh my
piano
god,
It
crazy.
is, isn't it?
Yeah.
Really mad, yeah.
I always make
I
them
just
just
thought,
listen.
I'll just put the piano in. I was like,
Yeah,
ooh.
no,
I always play the recordings for the black bit and say, listen to
Yeah,
this.
exactly. It's not
Yeah.
about you. And this
Yeah.
is really the first time that they've had something that's like, obviously they've had lots of less interesting bits of their tunes, but they haven't had anything that is really like, oh yeah, that's true, the Boccherini, that's really a compliment. Apart from the Boccherini, yes,
Yeah.
thank you, Joe.
Just that bit. That bit.
Yeah, yeah. So the other box is 38. Make sure they release that 3 because otherwise they'll have. So that's a big shift. I mean, that's a big point for them. Swap. This is difficult for them to do. And again, this is arm, hand. We've got to sort of engage the bow hold.
So which bar is this?
So halfway through 38.
So,
Okay. Oh yeah.
38.
No shift there.
And then you have to release that third finger at the end of bar 39.
Yes,
Is that the
exactly.
actual?
Yeah, swap your fingers. I think it's a helpful phrase. And if you are shifting, then this is going to be difficult to tune. Both the D sharp and the second E.
Yeah. I think it's.
But it's an interesting thing doing those kind of like spot finger shifting for book 4.
Yes, but like I was saying to Ed earlier, I think my students do a lot of that, like in perpetual motion, in long ago. In, you know, like if you're, you can say, or where's the bit? No, it's a different piece.
Oh, okay.
I mean, you just
Yeah.
hop around with it.
That would do my head in.
That's a
Yeah.
very, very advanced thing for them to do. You'd have to do it very slowly, but it
Yeah.
would be amazing for the yellow with a hot pink 3-ring pattern over the different strings.
Yeah.
Never done it before, but I'm sure it would be good.
But at first, when you did the first section, I was thinking that you was doing it, playing the melody all on one string.
Yeah, that's another thing that I do a lot.
Okay.
Yeah,
Right.
that's fourth position though, isn't it?
Yeah.
So this, can I do that? You mentioned that finger pattern. For this thing, B flat, C, D, that's yellow with a hot pink.
It
three,
is.
it?
And so is this.
Okay. Okay.
Right. Okay. Right.
Okay.
So this B flat, this G minor thing is basically the yellow with the hot pink three a lot of the time.
A lot. Book 2 and book 3 are both stacked with yellow with the hot pink 3s. I mean, that's the reason that it's got the special colour, is so that the children like it, because it's the big challenge. You know, G major to D major, sorry, D major to G major is fine. You've got the 1 and the 3 nicely cocooning your 2, but the 4 is not reliable, and therefore to put the 3 next to the 4, and the 2 is still unreliable because you don't know whether it's going to be where it's going to be. That's what makes that so tricky.
With this piece, one of the things I think is hard also is going from the low one on the E to the E flat on the 1 to E flat 4. You know, you've got
Yes,
lots of
definitely.
the string crossing between the F natural and the E flat using that's a big stretch, isn't it?
Yeah,
And also
And-
just not playing openly.
which piece will help a lot with that.
Is it the Bach G minor?
Yeah, the one G minor. Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. The half position, I definitely would not recommend to do the underneath fingering and slide your 1, revolting. I have not put in a box because mostly my kids just think it's a bit exciting, so they do it a few times extra and they just can do it. But obviously, if they can't, then you would want to put it in a box. And you'll probably know from the personality of the child whether they'll need it or not as a box. But that's obviously the other challenge in the major section. Okay. Do you have questions about staccato?
Yes. When I'm never quite sure how much to when you're how short and in terms of the actual mechanism of the hand, because it teaches kind of thumb pinch thing, but I find that really they find that quite hard to. I mean, certainly I've found that quite a difficult thing to teach, the idea of that the thumb pinch and.
Okay, how are you
teaching? How much weight with that finger do you put in at all?
I don't ever talk about adding weight with the first finger.
You don't ever.
I do talk about just squeezing the bow.
Right.
And I do a lot of. Can you just come to me so the camera can see it? Of going around and saying, okay, can you stick your finger out, make it strong, so it's my bow. Of checking that they're doing this.
Yeah.
So if I find, can you make your finger strong? If I find this, then I would be like, what are you doing with your one? It's not about the one. But if I have an even amount of pressure across the four, that feels fine to me.
Across the 4 fingers.
Yeah, I'll come and show you. So make your finger strong. So if I feel this,
right.
I'm definitely going to talk about it.
Yeah.
But if it's that, that's fine with me. Like the first finger is working. I
Yes.
don't want them just to do that.
Right, okay.
Personally. I think there are some people who do.
Yeah, that's...
Doesn't matter. But so if I feel this, then I definitely will talk about it. But this is like I wouldn't want this with like totally limp 1 and 4. Really useful exercises for making sure they're doing that are these ones.
Oh, right.
Just bring the stick down to the hair.
Right.
And in the middle. And you'll see if they're trying to do it with their arm. Yeah, let's all do it.
Yeah.
So do some at the balance point. And you can see it, like one of you just decide to do it wrong without telling us who it is. And look around the room and you can see who it is probably. Yeah. So if they're just pronating, the little finger will come off. If they're not squeezing enough, nothing will happen to the stick and the hair relationship. It will just, if they're doing it with the arm, you'll see this sort of chicken wing thing happening.
So it's between the thumb and the middle finger, isn't it? Is that right?
Well, I think of it as
both.
just a squeeze,
Just
the whole thing.
So are you
The whole hand, not that.
Not
The whole hand.
the whole hand.
Providing their fingers are in the right.
Exactly.
Because if their thumb is not pointing up into the stick,
Oh yeah.
and if their pinky's not on top,
Yeah.
yeah.
If you've got a rubbish bow hold, a bow staccato is going to be the thing that really undoes you.
Yeah.
I mean, you can play quite a lot of really nice tone without really addressing that. And it's possible. Like, let's not fall into this Suzuki trap of it won't work unless you've taught them how to do it this way. You can look on YouTube. Some of the greatest players in the world never have their little finger on. I don't know how they do it. I can't do it. It's clearly harder, but you can do it. It's possible. So let's just not tell our students that it will never work. We just tell them it's a lot of extra work for you if you're going to try and work with a bow hold that's not working well. Why don't you make it easier on yourself, fix your bow hold, and then you'll find it easier to do.
Just back to my university audition at Goldsmiths years ago, and it's like they said no, you haven't got your little finger on the bow, and that was like the big sort of feedback on it.
Who did you have?
I had no idea.
Goldsmiths for the music college.
Yeah,
for the
yeah.
music.
For the music course when I
I didn't
going
know
to
they
uni.
had people who would even care at that kind
Yeah,
of
it
level.
was like a big thing.
We'll have a conversation about that.
And then of course I ended up going to music college anyway.
What year
so,
was this?
Oh, I was that age. So, But I look back and just
2020.
whatever that was.
Okay. Right. So you do this lots of places in the bow. You check that you get them to do it on your hand or your arm.
Yeah, she's going to release as well, aren't you?
Yeah. You get them to do. You do it on them so that they can feel it.
Right.
And obviously you're going to review piece number 1
Piece number 1.
for up bow staccato.
I would go from a minuet. Would I?
Not really. Exactly. Yeah. Up bow staccato. Obviously, this is up bow staccato. I'm not saying it's not, but if they're not doing that right, then you really are in trouble. So maybe consider a different route with that child if the minuets are not coming out clearly. But obviously, if they're not, that is a way that you can step back. But for most of them, that will lead to this. And you'll hear it in Witch's Dance, you'll hear, you know, if they haven't got that stopping of the bow and the clarity that comes from that, then, you know, long ago, Witch's Dance, what else?
Minuet and G.
Very good.
Stopping, I don't know, minion, no.
I mean, it's sort of a trick question, this is the next one.
Yes.
That's your route. Long ago, minuet and G, this. And that's why we have to do lots of twinkles and scales and all the extra, you know, we come... Turn it into a dance. And a beat, not a quaver, unless you really want them to suffer.
Yeah.
Yes.
I did that in group.
Yeah, nice. Good.
Wow.
So you do need to go back and use those review pieces. And then this particular thing in row 11 is confusing because of the 3 in a slur, then the up bows. So you have to teach this first and then add a note. Okay? They will not just be able to put that together by themselves. So make sure you take out the first 3 and teach them as a chunk, and then add the up bow staccato after that. And this is how we know it's a mountain piece. We have spent 45 minutes discussing this one piece. And I would not use it for up bow spiccato until you've got late book 4 students who can already do spiccato well, because partly of this is not like it's more complicated because of those sort of grace notes, semicravers. Everybody good? I'll leave you time to write. Extremely unstable storm.
What was that you said in bar 11 about the way you
Teach as one chunk,
Oh, okay. No.
because they get confused as to whether the E flat starts within, like, sort of has a stop between the D, or that's what they find difficult, is the go towards the E flat, and then you can add them on the rest, because otherwise you get. And then it messes up the timing.
Yeah. So do you say the E flat is maybe it's just got a little bit more length to it than the other ones? Yeah.
Or emphasis. I wouldn't really go into so much detail that
No.
I'm measuring the bow length versus but just bring it out a bit, whichever way works for them.
looks like you end your bow in the middle of the bow, so you space it in the other.
And the E flat.
In the middle.
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
the lower half.
Yeah. And the question is, can we do Gavotte and D major in 15 minutes and Bach Bow in 15 minutes? I think probably not. Are you all teaching catch-up week?
I am, although it's
Yeah.
now appearing it's only Taya, because Joseph and Nadia are off to Saudi.
Oh, but it's still school time.
They're off to Saudi,
Okay.
so
I just do
Um,
it anyway. I just do it.
Mine's just the first week, so.
But I mean, can't stay away.
And no, I just think it's not in my interest for them to have fewer lessons.
Yeah. Because if we don't finish it, maybe we could just meet at like 3 or something to do Bachborough next week, so that we get to the Easter holidays having finished the teaching points. That's my goal.
It's going to take more than half an hour to do Barbara Road, haven't
Well, it's only taken 45 minutes to do.
it?
Let's go and see how we do. Right, exercise 5A on page 19. Check the left elbow is mobile.
What are we doing? Sorry, we're on the next piece.
No,
Oh.
Oh, that one.
Yeah. And then this next exercise is really nice as a canon in group. So let's play that so that you
What,
understand
5B?
what I'm talking about. 5B, yes. I was just trying to work out the way. I'm sure you can do 5A as a canon, but then you have to sort of teach what you're going to do at the end, which seems a little bit much because, you know, this is one of those checking things, isn't it? That you're checking everything is fine. So when you check everything is fine, you do it once and you never do it again.
right.
But if you check and everything is not fine, then it's just a flag that you need to sort out the left hand or the string crossing or whatever. Left elbow, sorry.
You could also do it in minor, couldn't you?
What are we doing?
You could. Do you want to read it off this?
Of course not.
Okay, so Ed and I are going to play as written, and Joe and Mimi are going to play one bar later.
This is 5B, right?
5B.
Yeah.
1, 2, 3, 1. Isn't that lovely?
Yeah.
So much nicer than if you just do what's written. And of course, if you have taught your students their arpeggios and they practice them regularly, that will be a piece of cake for them. And if you have not, it will not. Right, we've done it. We can turn the page. Oh, I think it's break time at 1:45, so we definitely won't get it all done. Okay, so talk to me about Gavotte in D major. Or should we play it first?
Yes.
No, talk to me about it first. What's new?
Double stops.
Good.
There's this there's bowing pattern in bar 26.
Good. This is the first bowed double stops we've had. Chords in the end of what? The low pizzicato?
Mignon.
Mignon, well done. But we have not had bowed double stops. It used to be in brackets. And now they've only... Oh no, maybe I'm just thinking about that second one. Anyway, it's...
Like this. In brackets.
Yes, oh good, I'm not going mad. And now they've just put the last one in brackets, which I think is a bit of a shame to play.
Yeah.
Either do it or don't do it.
Yeah.
But you know. Yeah. Okay. nonsense. Okay, I can play the piano for this one, so why don't you see how
There's
it
down
goes?
the complicated trills in the Boccherini, right?
Yeah.
Boccherini is yes. The Boccherini is the sort of lead up to this, isn't it? Really.
This one, it's nice if you play them the original piece first and then hear the different instruments.
Sorry, this was
It was nice if you can hear, if you can play them the original piece with the different instruments and how they're coming in sections.
Oh yeah. If you know that you need the music, use my stand.
No, I was just,
Okay.
I stood up too quickly.
Oh, alright. I thought you were peering at your music.
No, I was
just
just,
having a moment. Are you okay?
Yeah, yeah.
And I didn't just mean you, I just mean generally everybody, to be fair. You know, this is one of those endless pieces.
And
Right, maybe you're the leader to start with this. very weird bowings in it, hasn't it?
They are so annoying.
Yeah, they're so annoying. If we were not part of a global movement to play the same music the same way, we would definitely make a lot of changes, but as we are, I think we must not. I have to say the only thing that I do teach differently from the book in the first instance is bar 12. I do allow them just to do 4 notes in a slow. And then in review we put the staccato in because it just makes it so much more difficult. And once they're into bar 4/8 or even book 4, they can just do it, it's not a problem.
What is it? Sorry, which bar was that again?
13, no, sorry, halfway through 12 and then in the second Gavotte.
It's a separation on review.
Right, you just do, yeah, okay.
So I'll just do smooth slurs the first time through.
So it just doesn't, yeah.
I think it's great that it's near the end of the book because they're desperate to finish the book, so they'll put the work in. It's not a massively rewarding piece for most children, or me personally.
I don't like it.
Do they?
I don't know. I mean,
I think they quite like it once they can play it, but they're not. Most of mine, maybe it's because I'm not massively fond of it, but you know, they haven't been massively motivated to practice
energy and
it.
stuff. I like it.
Yeah, I mean, I like it once it's good. Okay, so while we're talking about Gavotte number 2, let's do the teaching points for Gavotte 2 now, and we'll do the other one next time. So, what is difficult? This is a preview box, the box from halfway through 12 to the end of the line. It's not tremendously difficult. It needs very, very slow and careful practice. I would recommend you make them a video to practice with this because otherwise they'll go too fast. And you want to talk about your finger patterns. So, I mean, this kind of slow. And if you're doing, whichever bowing you're doing. Stop. Okay, so which finger pattern are we in?
Red.
Well done. And then you've got to release your 3 because we're going into yellow. And then, Ed, next 4 notes are in?
Back to red.
Yeah, red. Yeah, so really slow. So when you make your video, okay, my turn, your turn. Ready, play. And then you can, like, mime it. My turn. Ready, play. Right, check, you've taken your 3 off and you've got it next to 4. My turn. Ready, play. Etc. Yeah? So do a video that's really, really exactly how you want them to practice it, because otherwise you won't get the results that you want. Whereas lots of the boxes, you don't need to do that. Lots of them, they will just get it from being in a box. And then obviously you've got the upper note trills. Okay, the double stopping, first of all, 2 strings, less weight, more weight, or the same weight as 1 string?
More.
If you're playing 2 strings, do you need less weight, more weight, or the same amount of weight
Same.
as 1 string?
No, I've got the heavier on the C sharp.
For your students, Mimi, I mean, I would love to hear you play it with a heavier C sharp. That would be delightful. But this is the first time they've ever done a bowed double stop. You're not going to be like, more weight on the A string.
No,
No.
okay, yeah. So yeah, slightly flatter bow as well, I suppose, to cover the strings.
Same.
Is that right? Would you?
Well, you've answered a lot of other different questions, which is fantastic. But
Sorry.
no, it's all right. But what do you think? Saying more or less difference between 1 string and 2 strings?
Keep
Ed.
it the same.
Same. Joe?
Same.
Same.
Yes, that's what I think. Simon Fisher thinks more. I've never understood that. It's almost the only thing I disagree with in his basics book. Like, because otherwise, if you play, that's the dynamic that you want, and then you go more, then you just get a crunch. I really don't get it. I just don't understand what, like, physics-wise as well as physically, nothing changes if you've got the bow on both strings. It doesn't resonate less so that you need more weight. They don't depress less, I mean maybe microscopically.
I mean, you've got more drag, which means there's more resistance if you've got two strings pulling on it, but it's not enough to really counter it.
No, I mean again, I think this is like, in a lab you might be able to say, yeah, you need that much more, but not so you would feel it playing. Anyway, so for me it's just the angle you need to practice. Because they've never played their bow on that angle on purpose before.
On purpose.
Again, if you've got someone who needs to move, get a move on, or someone who, you know, if you've got kids sitting the 11 plus exams, or private school exams in year 6, or at the other end of the spectrum, GCSEs, or, you know, if they've got a lot else going on, every single detail is something that's going to slow them down and make them feel less good about their violin playing. So I think if you have someone in any of those situations, the practice has gone down temporarily, then just teach without the double stops and put them in review. But I have to say I don't normally do that, partly because there's quite difficult double stops in the first piece in book 4, so you don't want to make life too easy for yourself now in order to store up trouble later on. Because the first double stops you get in book 4 are... I mean, that's a massive step up from this, isn't it? And then... So really, like, double stopping is something that you've got to think about during early book 4 or late book 3.
I think if you sort of present it as one of the cool things about playing the
Yeah.
violin,
Yeah.
you know, lots of instruments can't play 2 notes.
Yeah.
at the same time.
And the tonisation that you showed me last week, is it
So you can teach that in broken steps first. I have a whole YouTube playlist called Tonalisation, which you can see lots of different versions of how I teach tonalisation.
Would that be too hard to put in here?
No, I don't think so. The octaves won't be in tune, but that's fine. Nobody's octaves are in tune the first time they start doing them. Most people never get them in tune, so you know, you've got to start somewhere, right?
Yeah.
Okay, it is break time, but could somebody make a note? Well, I could make a note, couldn't I? But we have covered the 4th line and the first half of the 5th line. So basically we've got to do all of the 1 D major. So maybe if we meet for an hour and a half, and then if we finish earlier than that, we can have a break before your teaching. So we could meet at 2 next week. I haven't looked at my diary. I may not be free, but I will.
2 o'clock next week.
Yeah, no, we will.
Okay.
That's good news.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Let's.
You can see it take.
Okay, well done everybody.
I don't want to.